Today's episode dives deep into creativity, and my guest is Rebecca Heidt. Rebecca is an accomplished LGBTQ writer, artist, and lover of anthropology, history, spirituality, and nature. She has self-published the Acceptance series, including Acceptance the Beginning, Acceptance the Reality, and Acceptance Reborn, with a fourth book, Acceptance Reconcile, in progress. Rebecca is also working on a feature film, and that is how we got introduced to each other and how we met. The feature film is called Secret of the Warrior, based on her first book, collaborating with international production teams, including Bulgaria. She has been honored by being featured in several magazines, one being the January and February edition of 2024 issue of LDL magazine. Across all platforms, Rebecca is recognized for her neurodivergent wisdom and impactful advice for aspiring writers, leading her to be a sought-after podcast guest on topics of motivation, mental health, and writing, and, of course, creativity for this podcast because, well, she is creative. So with her growing experience and knowledge, she has had the privilege of receiving multiple awards in LGBTQ, contemporary, women's, and urban fiction. Rebecca has also been recognized for her forward thinking and motivation to help make the world better by being awarded the 9th rank in the iconic 100 Impact Igniters worldwide for 2023. And now we both go beyond creativity, tackle many topics, including her writing, her filmmaking process, neurodivergence, LGBTQ, and so much more. So welcome, Rebecca. How come that you're so into Sweden?
I get that asked a lot. It's I like Viking. I like Viking history. I love anthropology. I love mythology. And I've always had a drawn to Norse mythology in particular. Also, I like to blame it on my Scandinavian ancestry personally, but I really love just Sweden and the Scandinavians and just the general, like Denmark and Belgium. Like I don't know, something about the history. When I decided on the country so in my books in particular, they're all in Sweden. I chose specifically. So what I said was in my brain, what country doesn't get a lot of notice? What country doesn't get a lot of hype around it? Because obviously European countries get a lot of attention from films, and London is a very popular destination to write about. So I moved my mind over to more Scandinavian area. I was like, okay, who doesn't really cause any trouble ever? And that was literally a thought. That was a thought. And I was like, who could also benefit, or what area could benefit from this attention that I'm bringing to the culture and everything? And I just randomly was like, Sweden. Yeah, I was just like, Sweden, because I love Viking, and it's Sweden. Yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
I was particularly interested in that because I have a colleague and friend I work with who is Swedish, and he's such a nice person. So if you ever considered Europeans nice, just talk to her.
Yeah.
She really is just like a charm. Amazing. So that was why I was interested in why Sweden? Why are you so into Sweden?
I did that on purpose. Not only because I enjoy the aesthetics that the country has to give and the history and the uniqueness. And as I wrote my books, I really dove into it pretty hard and to learn more about it. So I was like, this was a great choice. But also just, it was going to raise questions around the country. Be like, why this one? Be like, why not? Let's show some love to the individuals that don't usually get it. And I was like, let's do it. Because I like to make things as awkward as possible. Let's make it fun awkward.
Well, it is in fact fun and awkward how we got to meet on this podcast, on this show. True. And I was so delighted by the chance and the opportunity that you provided to me. Because, and just for the listeners, I was actually applying to Rebecca's film that we will be talking about in this episode as well. And I knew I'm too young for the role, but the role is so intriguing and interesting. And if it would have been maybe 10 years younger, I could have nailed it. I would have nailed the role.
Yeah.
And then I just applied anyways, and I was just fascinated by the plot and the story and the movie making idea that she is pursuing currently. And she wrote back. I wrote back again, and then we switched to WhatsApp, and I said, "Hey, by the way, I do have a podcast. Why don't you come and talk about the movie?" So here she is. And it is a special treat for me because I really love speaking with creatives, filmmakers, and she, like Rebecca, is a true creative. She's an author and a filmmaker and brings it all together under one umbrella. And above all, she also, I don't know how to say that politely, or excuse me if my English isn't appropriate here, but deal or manage, navigate,
yes,
and or neurodiversity. And bringing this all together is interesting me to talk about, and just elaborate on this one. Anyways, it is an awkward coincidence that we talk on this podcast, and I'm so thrilled to have you on board and to have you in this show and
thank you.
Explore the topics around your movie, your books, and your creative process.
Yeah.
Why don't you kick things off by sharing how your creative journey began?
Sure.
How did you become a creative one?
It's a pretty interesting story because if I go all the way back to like when I've always been creative, it just depends on if I leaned into it or not, if I gave it the attention that it needed, or if I paused it, which is in the case of my story, my life. In 6th grade, we did creative writing for a random English class on some popular books, The Giver and Birds. And they were like, okay, the book ends, continue it. And it moved my teacher at 6th grade, so much. They were like, you can really do something with this. And I was like, I'm in 6th grade. I was like, cool. I didn't understand. So I've always had this unique ability to see a world from different eyes than what is written. I don't really know where it came from or how it came to be. I have a natural knack for like painting and just seeing the world in a different kind of light, and just people loved it. But also there was that social undertone where you're like, okay, starving artist, isn't that? Yeah, sure. We're starving artists all the time, but it feeds the soul, if you will. We might be starving, but our soul is happy. So it was that weird, okay, I need to go out into life. I need to go to college. I need to get a degree. I was a restaurant general manager for 10 years. I was district manager for the food industry. And eventually I was like, I need to do what I love, which is writing and creating, because there's a certain point where corporate life and the things that individuals want you to do to be quote unquote successful head to head with your brain being bored and you just being in this grain in life. And then right before COVID hit, I lost my district manager job. I was between jobs and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So I just leaned into my creativity, and that's when I really started painting a lot. And I realized I miss this so much. So I pulled out my old stories that I really didn't do anything with. And I again leaned into that and really explored it. And by exploring, not just my go-to is the ocean, flowers, I like old ships. I don't know. It's a history thing. I don't know. But like nature. And so that's my surface work. And then I write about these things, sunsets and stuff, but then going deeper into it, that's where the story is. So when I had that time in between jobs, you really have to look at your feelings, where they come from. So I really kicked into it in 2020, around 2020, 2021. And I released my first book in 21. And then I released the book every single year, 21, 22, 23. Because I was like, this is where it's at. Yeah. So I mean, it was always there. Whether or not I listened was a completely different story. And that's the main thing I like to remind people, that we are all creative. We all have this amazing spark in us, whether it's sewing and you make amazing quilts, or clothes styles, or internal design, custom design. There's so many different creative platforms. You can cosplay. Although some of these cosplays are just on point. They're just amazing. And I was like, we need to be friends immediately. I want some fairy wings right now. Yeah. So it's just I decided that I was going to be true to myself. I can still work. I can still do the things and do what I love to do.
So it's rediscovering what actually nourishes you.
Yes.
As you said quite nicely, that it feeds the soul. Although we are starving artists. In a way, we are more nourished than someone else, because I've seen that in my PhD works when I was working in the university, pursuing that classical, regular kind of stuff, type of career, where my other fellows and colleagues were feeling unfulfilled. But I had acting, and I felt, fed or nourished. But anyhow, so what I'm getting out of your short story is that you always had it in you, or it was always there, but you never tapped into it quite as intentionally as you did when COVID hit, right?
Correct. Yeah. When you have that much time, and I've led a lot TV, I love TV, and then I love gaming as well. So I stopped doing those things because there was this revelation at one point. I worked at the restaurant, and then when I wasn't working, I was playing my video game. I would sleep, I'd wake up, work, play the video game, go to sleep, which is a cycle. And then I was like doing all these achievements in the video game. And at some point I was like, if I die today, none of these game achievements will mean anything. And it was just the most epiphany moment of my life. So I put it down, and I put all of that, whatever was the video games are feeding into me for the moment. So I just put it all into my artwork. So all the free time I had was, so I would wake up, I would work on my art in some kind of way, go to work, at lunch, I would work on my art. I would literally take canvases and acrylic paint with me to lunch. So I could, people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm creating magic. Or like spray paint. And they're like, this stink. Like, it literally smells because it lingers around for a couple hours. I'd be like, but look how beautiful it is. Be like, okay, it is very pretty. Yeah. Be like, just stare at it. It makes you feel better. And yeah, I spent all of my time and I poured all of my energy into it, almost to make up for lost time, if you will.
Yeah, but what I can hear from that again is that there's a feeling, or correct me if I'm wrong, but that there's a feeling or drive to that's the English word, to contribute to society, to, what is it? How would you say it? What is driving you to be creative?
So I do art for me, but also large part for me. I write for myself. The stories I wrote were for myself, but also to share with whomever is willing to listen or read it, or willing, because not everyone's willing. And that's the key there. You can't force someone take a course to water. You can't make them drink. Yeah, that exact thing. So when I use my paintings and my writing as an emotional outlet for processing, when I'm not it's like talking to my best friend, but it's actually the reader. Yeah, it's pretty much like I'm letting my information and my knowledge be given to anyone who wants to read it, and available to those who want to hear it. So it was for me, but also mostly for other people as well. Because fear for me is the same as fear is for you. Just the topic of it is different. Sadness for me and a loss of a pet or something, it's universal. Emotions are universal. And that's the point. And that's why it connects to so many people worldwide. Because we talk about feelings and emotions, not necessarily like specific places in the world. I mean, yes, it's in Sweden, but heartbreak is heartbreak, regardless of who you are and where you live.
Is that something you also weave into your acceptance series? So could you share how you did this, how you do this? Because you wrote one book a year, which is quite amazing, actually, to be honest, which is insane. So please.
Yeah. So I found out that the way I write is called method writing, which means I only write what I can see, and I only write what I can feel. If I need to write something sad that day, or I'm up to a portion that's supposed to be sad, I won't work on it. I will do it only justice if I'm like in the place to do it. So when I write about, there's a lot of grief, But when I say grief is, yes, it's someone important to you has passed, but also maybe a childhood home that you have to leave or gets destroyed or whatever in the case of the story that gets destroyed. And grief of your old life to your new life, grief of who you used to be and who you're growing to be. It's not always bad. So I talk about very real things, a lot of things that friends may not take the time to talk about. It's very deep. In book 3 in particular, my father passed while I was writing it. So I used that as a
tool for catharsis or
yeah,
for
a way
dealing with
to
it?
exactly, yeah. So there's a couple portions in it that I talk about the sunset, and I talk about it's here before we were born. It will be here after we were born, and it will continue to rise and fall, and that's the definition of eternity. And I talk about the colors and stuff, and they're very deeply profound, but I do it in a way that it hits everyone in their own way, but it also encompasses the story. So it's the main character through her eyes, her going through all these emotions. I lost my childhood home. I lost the person who's the parental person that raised me. I lost my first love because we just aren't connecting on the right level. Everything I knew isn't what I knew it to be. And it's just, how many times have we learned a secret that someone tried to keep from it? Like, how many times we're like, for example, my dad was adopted and I didn't know. I was told when I was 12, but I thought these people were my grandparents, but they weren't. Then you're like, oh my God, and then you have to deal with it.
Could you just briefly summarize for those who didn't read your book, what the main topic is and what things you address in that book?
The books are about a bisexual loner who was raised by her uncle. Her family was killed in a coup for power. And she spends the story in self-discovery, learning how to be herself and the expectations of the legacy of her parents and what her uncle wants her to be, figuring out how to be, quote unquote, normal, a normal human being, and someone who has mystical abilities of green fire and strength, extra strength. So she's not quite human, but she's trying to be human.
Sorry if this is too personal, but it makes me think or wonder if there are aspects of your own personal story in that book, because maybe it's a far stretch, please.
Not a far stretch. I very much, because I poured my own emotions at the time into Selena, parts of myself are most definitely in that character. For each character, I've pulled from different people in my life and just build it out a little bit differently. Like Melanie is her best friend, and she's really the humor of the story, if you will. Like she has that, like the most loyal, dedicated. She has that humor, and she's the best friend I hope everyone would have. And that's how I built her. If I had the perfect best friend, that's who it would be. So I've built them all based off of ideas or different people.
Has there been some mission or vision why you actually wrote that book? The purpose, maybe?
There is, yes. I've touched on so many different things, so everyone can grab what they want from it. But the main reason I wrote the story is to help people understand that just because the expectations were put upon us by the environment that we were raised in and the people that have raised us doesn't mean that's who we need to be. We just have to figure out how to balance respectfully their expectations, or depending on what their expectations are, but also being true to yourself and understanding the difference. But I mean, the message in there is we are who we choose to be. And if we choose to be not great people, that's not because of people around us, because you chose that.
Oh,
yeah.
It is. I find it true. But I think lots of people struggle with that epiphany or with that insight.
Yes.
Because it's easier to blame the world around us for just being shitty.
Yes. And I knew that. So writing a story around it was a gentle way, or not gentle way, depending on how you take the book. It was to remind them, individuals reading it, that this is in fact, yes, there are situations, but you can still be a decent human and find your way if you want to be.
That's gold.
I know.
And I think if we take this responsibility for our lives and for ourselves, a lot of problems would just vanish because, well, we would take care of them. And we wouldn't choose to feel bad if we can choose. But I think this only comes with a certain amount of consciousness that we have to apply to our circumstances.
Correct.
So it sounds like a great reminder, packed or wrapped in a great story to elevate our consciousness.
My hope was
please.
to help the world and the situations that are happening throughout, because there's something happening everywhere all the time. We can't necessarily stop. There's a perfect world is being okay with every argument ever to happen. And that without going too much into it, I just wanted to remind people that people have their opinions all the time, regardless of what is happening. But how you react to that will depend on how it reacts. So that I put the main character, Selena, through a couple of depressions. I had her act poorly to certain situations and work through it. And I did that on purpose because she's not a perfect citizen. And we're not perfect humans. There's no perfect human. The point is that's okay. As long as there's an awareness. So my book series is around awareness. Just saying it's going to be okay. You're allowed your feelings. Just take a second, take a breath, like you're not alone. And I feel like sometimes people feel like they're alone. And that can be a situation, but they're not. Like, if you called me on WhatsApp and was like, I'm having the worst day ever, and I just want to light things on fire and be like, Chris, I got you. Let's talk about it. Like I would not hesitate. But that's who I am. But that's also an understanding that there are individuals out there. You just have to recognize it in yourself to take the hand, if you will.
Did the people around you respond to that, or did they agree with you? Did they cheerlead you maybe along the way? How did they react to that idea of becoming awareness, taking responsibility and all that?
It had a mixed reaction. But I can tell you that this book series in particular has been extremely successful with, I'm in my 30s. So for like 35 and up, like to even 70 or 80, I've read this book and just fell in love with it. I did not anticipate that, but I'm so happy. Like my older relatives read it and they just were like, that you wrote this? Be like, I'm actually really deep human. I seem very like whimsical, which I am, but I'm also a very deep human. At first, there's certain things that had resistance and I would be alone in the decision, but the goal is to get the message out regardless of who supports me and not, because it's too important. What the books are, what the films are, and what it embodies, and the different countries and that are involved in each thing is just, that's more important to me than support. I love support and it's healthy, but it's not always there. And sometimes the only support I have is myself, which is fine because I self-talk myself. And I'm like, we got this. We got it. And that's all I need. I'm like, let's do this because it's too important.
Yeah, I hear walking the talk that what you wrote in that book here, because you take responsibility for the circumstances or the cards that you've been dealt, and just making the best out of it. I don't know if this translates directly into English, but if life gives you lemons, make lemonade out of it.
Yes.
So this is something that I get from what you said here. But you also nicely into making the movie here. So what's the deal with that? How did you came up with that idea? Because, well, one book series isn't enough. I make another movie out of it because, well, to quote Barack Obama here, yes, I can. No, sorry.
That's so funny. When I wrote the books, I saw the scenes in my head. I saw it in my head. So I wrote it how I saw it. It was always a film. I've been manifesting a film for 4 years. That I was like, this is going to be a film. This is going to be a film. I'm not going to try to make it. It will be a film. It's going to happen. To me, I know what I want for the whole franchise is a comic book. I'm going to make a side comic book. I'm going to make it was requested by some of the actors to get the backstories of, because you get Selena's backstory and some of the other characters' backstory, but they want like Skylar's life before Selena, and they want Abigail's life before all of this happens. And I was like, okay, there was another chapter book, each chapter being a person and their point of view and stuff. So I have a 5 to 10 year goal without it being a 5 to 10 year goal, but me manifesting and understanding what this is going to be and making it happen. To me, everything else is white noise. So I don't really play into drama of other people. I don't let outside stuff really persuade me. I just research and figure out the best course of action. So when it came to the film, I still need to make book 4. And I knew that I wasn't going to make book 4 until the movie was going to make. I'm going to make it between it. So I knew that I was already thinking, okay, I have 2 pathways to make this film. And I chose one, and I kept going, and I kept researching, and I kept asking questions. And I'm the type of person that when I run into a barrier or a challenge, I walk around it to see what exactly is the issue. Is it a timing thing? Is it an admin thing? What is causing the issue? And then I'll either address it or I'll move slightly to the side and continue on a different way. When I know I want something, I don't give up ever. This is mine and it will be mine forever.
Thanks for the short lesson on problem solving here.
Yeah, everyone needs it.
No, I think it's a great metaphor to how to address problems, because you just shared your strategy here.
Yes.
I never heard about this before. And to be honest, I don't want to brag, but I do have a PhD in creative problem solving, but this is just gold.
It's a neurodivergent brain. That's what it is.
It is amazing. It is just amazing. And it seems so logical to me. And maybe I hope the listeners will get that as well. But you just made my day with that description of how you address problems. So what is your current stage in the filmmaking process?
So technically it's a weird pitch stage and pre-production. So also the way that I function is I know that there's a system. You're supposed to work on pitch and then pre-production and then filming and then post-production. And I work on all parts in each section at all times. So for example, if I'm waiting on someone to read the script, like an investor, which may take a week or 2 because they're busy, I will not sit and wait for them to read it. I will kindly check in on them and be like, hey, what's the ETA or whatever? And then I'll move somewhere else down the line that I can work on or I can reach out to. So for example, 50% of the music for post-production is already picked and created. I have custom songs made by Morgan Clay, which is already out, called Symphony. I have Michael Stringer, who made some classical. I have a rock rap song by Go Getter O. We just have to pay for the license. And I have almost all of the music picked out. So when post-production comes along and you need to put the music in, it's like a 3-day process instead of finding them and then getting the rights. I will already have that in place and I'll be like that. So I problem solve future problems over here before we start filming. I already have pictures of locations that I like from the Film Commission of Gothenburg, Sweden. So instead of waiting until I get pre-production, I already know what I want. I'm already starting conversations about permits and stuff like that and timelines and stunt people. And so all of that, it'll just be there's still going to be barriers, Lord knows. Universe has its way. But it will be a bit smoother than just waiting for it to arrive and be like, it's in God's hand. And be like, no, I already figured out the solution. It's just pretty much. So where we are is we just need to raise some more funds to get it filming. It's going to be filmed in the summer. We already have interest from Paramount Plus. We already have marketing in place with Be Inspired YouTube channel is 9 million viewers. They're going to do an hour video marketing after it's done. Like I already have a lot in place. 50% of the cast is in place. Part of the crew is in place. And I already have emails out to box offices in the Scandinavian area, also in the US as well. It's just there.
Yeah. You created quite a vivid image of the board game Snail Race. I don't know if you know it.
No.
But no, it isn't the best name for, or the best metaphor for what you say here, Snail Race. But my imagination, you're moving on like 10 different lanes in parallels. And some move quicker and some fall short, and then they catch up. And then so it's always moving like 10 lanes at the same point.
1000%. That's what it is. It's so funny, the snail game. I'm like, I don't know what this is.
Well, actually, it is a silly game because, well, you played with your friends. You have one snail and you can move slowly, and then others catch up, and it's a weird game. But they are parallel lanes. That's the point.
Yeah, that is
and
a very
you move
good.
on every lane.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Yeah.
And this is amazing. This is really amazing because you forecast and address problems that will, of course, arise, but you don't wait till they get you, but you get them in advance. And that is quite intelligent.
Yeah. It sometimes bends people the wrong way because how efficient I am at it. And I don't know if because they're jealous or they just, I'm ruining their flow, but it's extremely efficient. And it hasn't really, there are some times when I went a little too fast and I may have a learning incident for myself. I won't call it a mistake because it's learning. It's not a mistake. But it's very, so also the way I think about it is there's going to be 5 films total. Secrets of the Warriors, just 1. And the whole thing is going to be 5. I know how it's going to be cut up. I know the general idea and how it's going to be different from the books. I know all of that. So I also think, my brain thinks Secrets of the Warrior, and then in a different tab, my brain, it goes out to the whole project. So when I say, okay, let's do this in the script, how is it going to affect further down the line, and how can we modify it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think because my brain works on so many different levels at the same time, which has to do with my hyperfocus, my ADHD, it intimidates people. But I call it genius. I call it creative genius.
Yeah, totally agree. I really agree. And I can totally relate to this one because we haven't talked much besides this podcast. So you don't know me that well. I don't know you that well. We just have a mutual interest in making great art. But I did pursue a PhD in creativity. And at the same time, I was doing coaching work for teachers, trying to teach them acting skills. But at the same time, I was trying to get ahead with acting. But I knew that there are some milestones that I have to achieve, but I cannot influence at this time. So I have to wait for others. So I was always switching the lanes as well to try to get things moving because I didn't want to wait for this for a long time. At days, it felt like an energy waste. I was wasting my energies because I was blocked by other people and I couldn't find a way, how you described it, around the problem and seeing around it. But I can totally relate to that process as well as you describe it, but impressed of how you achieve so many creative works here, which is just amazing.
Thank you.
So what is some support that you would like to hear? Maybe there's a listener to this show and thinks, wow, this is a great project. I do want to encourage her. I do want to support her. How can they do that?
I don't know if I have an active fundraising account. I used to have Indiegogo, but it expired. I'm about to start a GoFundMe to help, which I will do later today. And I'll send it to you if you like. Yeah, so pretty much I'm going to make a page. Anyone who would like to donate financially to help support the film and the LGBT, because I know we didn't talk about that. We will get to that, I'm sure. But anything about the arts or anything that I'm doing, you can certainly financially support that or build around. There's audiobooks and actual books themselves. You're welcome to purchase that, sharing the information. I'm an indie artist, which means that I fund everything out of my pocket, which is part of sometimes the holdback because I can only go as fast as the financial ability that I personally have. So support from individuals I use to pay rights for like indie artists for the film or admin information that I need to pay for the film or the books or et cetera like that. I like the ISBN to sell the books or something like that. I mean, everything goes directly. I invest all of my income, extra income into that. But sharing it is so important, word of mouth. Marketing is hard for someone who has this many projects. Marketing, I love people, but I hate marketing it. And I'm just like, look at my book. It's so cool. And they're like, why? And I'm like, read it and you'll find out. You'll cry and laugh. It's going to be great. And people are like, what? And I'm like, just literally just read it. So like word of mouth is super, super helpful.
The links are in the show notes, of course. But you you again pitched kind of another idea that I want to address here.
Yeah.
Because you spoke about divergency, and I don't know if we can tie things together. You did with your process of how you are creative, but maybe you can tell me more about this. How does it materialize itself in your life? What is it maybe? What shall people know about it? And do you want to make a story out of it? Or just what is it for you? Because I have my ideas about it. And I'm not sure if they are true.
So when I say neurodivergent, it's a different way of saying like autistic, even though I haven't been technically diagnosed as autistic. I sometimes I like to randomly dance. I have dance background in ballet, and I hum tunes that don't exist, or I sing little songs that aren't real, but they're real to me, and I just make stuff up. Then I have little tics where I go like this too. Depending on my anxiety level, it comes out mostly when I have a really great idea. Before I can even think about how to execute it, I get really excited, and then I have all of these like splashes of ideas and different stories. So many stories. But like, I always message someone and I was like, what if we did this and in New York City and we made a short, and I like word vomit everywhere to one of my friends with this creative idea. And they're like, sure, but how are you going to do it? And I was like, I will figure that out soon. So neurodivergent is like splashes of color. If I see a picture in my mind and I don't know how to describe it really. Like I love splashes of bright color. It's absolutely beautiful. When I go outside and it's fall and there's these beautifully bright, I think it's called a fire bush. I Googled it once and I really want it. So in the fall, it becomes just beautiful red leaf. And there's certain things that really trigger my creativity. So neurodivergent is random bouts of song, dance, visions of art, story ideas. The real trouble is the follow through. There is not a shortness on ideas. Do you have too many ideas developing at the same time that it pulls your attention, which I try my best not to happen because otherwise it will drive me nuts. Like I'll be overwhelmed by myself. How do you follow through with the idea? Is it worth the time? So my logic brain and my neurodivergent brain just leads the pack. And then my logic brain comes in and it's, okay, great ideas. That let's like think a little bit more down how we're going to execute this. So that's why I haven't started a comic yet. That's why I haven't started my chapter book on the backgrounds of each character. But I can certainly, I'm actually developing an LGBT short, potentially to be filmed in Philadelphia right now as I wait for Secrets of the Warrior to do its thing. So it's just finding some middle ground, let your excitement go, lean into it, write it down, always write it down because you'll forget it in 15 minutes, 1000%, write it down. It's okay if you have random things, just follow up with, do you want to do this? Throw some paint. Or just like I say, if my heart is saying I need to create something and I have some emotions let go, I literally throw paint on a canvas and it makes me happy and it's fine. It just depends on what it is. Is it doable? Is it logical? Can you follow through? Your brain's all blah, blah, blah.
It's just trying to get a quality question to you.
No, you're totally fine. Totally fine. There's a lot there. The key thing, the key to it also is there's a flip side to it. When you're that creative and you're that whimsical, individuals that you're around that are not tend to say that you're weird or why you like this. There's a negative notation sometimes that, one time I was in high school and I counted that 32 people told me I was weird in 2 weeks. And then I stopped counting and I just was totally fine with it. So the key to this is be you, but also don't get rid of your logical side because you need it. Like living life on the whim and blowing all your money on arts and crafts is not a great idea. But what is the word I'm trying to think of? Awareness. Be aware of it. You know what I mean? Like, I have moments where my ADHD is completely unhinged and I just makes no sense whatsoever. But then my logical sides come into the pain, you need to calm down. So being aware of both sides, being aware that individuals around you are not going to understand you, being okay with yourself. Yeah, it's find individuals that are similar to you. You just need one or two friends that are like really understand you. It's about quantity. It's about quality, not quantity. I was like, it's not about quantity, I promise.
Did you always have that capabilities of managing this aspect of yours, or always is bold here, but did you learn that in your early days or early years, or how did you manage to do that?
The self-awareness. Yeah, no, I still have difficulty with it because I love people so much. Like, I'm just so open with it. I'm not always great with boundaries. I could use some work on that. I'm still working on it. But being that open and loving towards everyone can let individuals that do not have the best intentions in when they should not be in. And I've learned plenty of lessons along the way. Eventually, so if you will, the cycle, the whole, you go through the thing and you let the bad people in when they shouldn't really, or you tolerate too much. Maybe the bad people should. That's not what I mean. But there's certain behavior that you tolerate that you shouldn't, but you want to be close to people so badly that you allow it and tolerate it when you shouldn't. And then you guys separate and go different ways. And then another person comes in, you want to be so close to them and their bad behavior just keeps going and going. Eventually we all hit that bottom where I'm tired of it. I don't want to do this no more. And that's your point where you're like, okay, I'm here for me, not for other people. If I think this person is going to be a really good friend of mine, but they treat me poorly, then I'm going to tolerate it. No, like, I'm my best friend and I need to take care of me because other people will not take care of me. And they're just here to sit at my table. It took me forever. And I'm still learning that. But it's a constant, once you're there and you understand it, it's like kayaking in a river and the tide changes. Like, that's life. You just have to modify it and recenter yourself. But just because you are at that place and just because I have that understanding, the earth has so many different energy. There's trillions of people, especially in film. There's so many people all over the place. And you don't know if they're being true or not. You don't know if your best interest, and you just have to modify it and figure it out as you go, but stay true to yourself. You take care of yourself always. I'm still learning that.
But it seems like you are walking the talk here, because that's the theme of the book series, having this awareness. And I think this makes it really congruent that you share what you actually experience in life and how you navigate life, especially with that special skill set of neurodivergent. Before that, you briefly mentioned the LGBTQ aspect of the work, and I do want to touch that area as well, if you're up for it.
Sure. Let's do it.
Please. Yeah, please. Share the whole story.
My stories in particular, it's not about the lead finding out that she's bisexual or LGBT. It's that she's already had a past girlfriend or one night stands. She likes both men and women. So this story in particular is she just exists. And that's the point of why I wrote it the way I did. There's gay characters in the film. Later on, there's could be non-binary. I'll be incorporating a trans down the road as well. The way I see it is LGBTQ, the letters that they stand for are general labels, but also the community itself is a general feeling as well. I consider myself fluid. I like energy. I like people's energy, not necessarily. And I consider myself pansexual in particular. Again, that's not one of the letters that are in the thing, but it's just like a general feeling. I like people. I like their energy. Are they, I don't want to say good, but does our energy complement each other? And that's what I care about, not necessarily what their definition is. And so it's such a interesting spectrum of identity. And I said it a couple of times to other people is I believe that the community is more about loving each other the way we are. And regardless of what the topic is or the label is, it's about loving who you are and being okay. And that goes into acceptance as well, is accepting each other for who we are regardless. Be like, I just like you as a person. I like your energy. And that's for everybody in the LGBT community, honestly. Like, we all hug each other most of the time. Sometimes we're not huggers. But those are introverted and we're like, no, we'll shake hands though. You know what I mean? I actually am donating some of the profits from the film to Single Step, which is a Sofia Bulgarian nonprofit who are advocating for the country of Bulgaria LGBT too. So I mean and an Indian LGBT charitable trust is also interested in. So it's a world thing. Again, it's not just a one individual thing. And that goes back into the story, Secrets of the Warrior and Acceptance Theory.
Are there any particular challenges that come up with that orientation in the book series? Well, there are different thoughts in my head that are at the moment trying to, fighting who wins to get out first. The first one is, let me put it this way and maybe rephrase my question. The first thing that came to mind is one of my second or first real short movie shooting in Germany, where I played a guy who was the love affair of another guy, and we needed to kiss. And to that day, I consider myself being more attracted to females. But to portray this role effectively, I have to, well, of course, kiss a dude. And I've never did that before. So there was no prior experience. And in the process of trying to get comfortable with the script and getting to know the other person and all that, I was feeling that fear of losing my identity, my sexual identity. And I was like, wow, what if I like it? What if it changes my whole sexual orientation? And then the next question was, well, what if it does? What's the problem with it?
Yes.
And I was like, then I'm really unaware of what this actually means, this sexuality thing. So I really had to face my fears of identity, of whatever this is. And I also had to learn more about myself in the process of getting into the role and doing it. And then the fun part was, it was a really good kiss. Like, from a technical aspect, Joshua and I, we really nailed it. We got like a huge round of applause, and we both looked at each other's eyes and said, anything? Do you feel it? And so, it was pretty good, wasn't it? Yeah, it was pretty good. But it was such a cathartic experience, because I had to face this kind of fear that I wasn't aware I was having, and it didn't matter. But at the same time, I was confronted with fears that exist, and that is maybe the leading principle or the leading idea that I want to bring across here in the question. Are there any fears that you need to face, or are there any, false ideas, any problems that you face or needed to face when writing the series or in your own life?
I've been very beneficial in the sense of I've faced a lot of my fears. When I was younger, sometimes I say I'm a lesbian, sometimes I say I'm fluid. It never stays the same, but usually I classify it as pansexual. So it's that fear of, if I say I'm lesbian, but then I have a liking towards a male, then I will then be lesbian. There's always that fear about it. But then I learned eventually that if people hold me to that word, I can change it. That's the thing about continually learning who you are as a person. I have personal displays of affection with females out in public. It used to take me forever, because I was just so afraid to do it. And now I'm just like, your hair is so pretty. It's just a development. I've spent so much time looking internally that I've asked myself these questions because for me to do what I'm doing right now, I really had to face a lot of it and talk about it to myself, a therapist, and a professional. I still have fears in general, but not around the LGBT community. And when I was a young lass, if you will, I was going to say chap, but whatever. When I was a youngin', I was afraid to talk to anybody. Anyone who talked to me, I would hide around the corner, and I was very shy. When I was in elementary school, I had an appointment with someone to help me with my reading because I was slow in my reading and my speech wasn't great. And I was so afraid to open the door and meet them. I stood outside of the door for the entire appointment for an hour. So for me to become who I am today has had a lot of help with people around me to grow, but also look at myself. Fears always happen. They're there. Like I have a fear sometimes riding a public bus because I'm afraid that I'm on the wrong bus. I'm going to mess up the plans. It's not because of the bus itself, but did I read that map correctly? Did I just add an hour? Am I going to get off at the wrong stop and figure it out and wait an hour? Because that happened before. It's just individual fears that I have is constantly working on them. Yeah, it's there. You just gotta, if anyone in the LGBT community, it's rough, especially for the young individuals in the community right now. They're really struggling. If you don't know who you are quite yet, that's okay. When I grew up, I wanted to be, I don't even remember when they're like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was a restaurant general manager. I worked in finance. Now I'm in film. It's okay. You don't know what you want to do. It's okay if you don't know what you want to major in college. I got my degree when I was in my 30s because I dropped out of college and went back in. I was like, it's okay though. If you don't know who you are, that's all right. I went into middle school they were struggling. And I told them when I was in middle school, I had no idea who I was a tomboy. I was a hot mess. I had no idea who I was until 9th or 10th grade, even an inkling of who I was as an identity. And that continues in adulthood. And that's okay. We can change who we want to be. And I just want to reassure everyone that as long as you're true to yourself, it's okay. I'll be all right.
So that would be a nice transition to, do you have any special advice or any personal advice that you would love to give younger creatives who are starting out on the creative journey, or like lessons learned from you along the way, something to bring it all home?
The best thing I could say is, as an artist, there is always that fear of putting your artwork, regardless if it's paint, whether it's a book, whether it's film, putting it out there because you're afraid it's not going to be good enough. And I can promise you that you not putting it out at all is worse than you attempting, putting it out and then whether or not it does well or not is fine. But it's the fact that you did it. Success means you honoring what you're trying to do, not necessarily everyone loves it. Not everyone loves my book. I don't care. My book and my story isn't for everybody. And that's fine. I don't really care. If you don't like LGBT or fantasy fiction, don't read it. I don't care. But it's the fact that it's out there at all. Honor yourself in that kind of way. If you grow a little bit and realize that you want to change the idea, you can. For example, when I first let out at the beginning, the cover was completely different until I realized that it's going to be a series and the covers of the series needed to connect to each other. So I actually have 2 covers for the beginning. I can always go back and change or add something to my book. Always. You can, any kind of art. Maybe a film will be harder because it's a whole thing. But I've made contracts with people for my book that were just the worst decision ever. And I would have to walk back from that. But realizing you're going to make those learning mistakes and realize that nothing's going to be perfect all the time. There's still errors in my books, grammar errors, misspellings. I don't care. It's out there. It's one day I might go back and whatever, but I'm happy with it. It won awards. People love it. That success doesn't mean like 20,000 purchases of whatever or high number of income or whatever. It means you did what you set out to do and be proud of yourself.